Would you like to know one of the most critical cloud architect and enterprise architect skills that most people even don't know to learn? If so, this video is for you. Hi, my name's Mike Gibbs. I'm an enterprise architect with about 25 years experience in various architecture roles. I lead a global enterprise architecture training company, and today we're going to talk about one of the most critical cloud and enterprise architect skills. It's called CXO relevance, and CXO relevance is understanding what members of the C-suite care about, knowing what questions to ask members of the C-suite so you can help them run their businesses better or design an architecture or strategy for them, and being able to cater to their needs. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the top 5 or 6 executives that you'll typically work with, say a cloud architect or enterprise architect. We'll discuss the CEO or chief executive officer and what they care about. We'll discuss the chief financial officer and what they care about, otherwise known as the CFO. We'll talk about the chief operating officer or the COO and what they typically care about. And then we'll talk about the chief information officer or the CIO and what they care about, as well as the chief technology officer and what they care about, or the CTO. Now, these are going to be many of the stakeholders you'll work with cloud or enterprise architects. And if we understand the C-suite's needs, we can better cater to them and better communicate with them. So let's first talk about the CEO or the chief executive officer. Now, this is the strategist that's in charge of the company. So the CEO's main goals and responsibilities around the organization's vision or the organization's growth or expanding the market or enhancing revenue, that type of thing. So if you can think of the CEO and what they really care about as a rule: revenue growth, market expansion, competitive differentiation against the other competitors, investor confidence and investor relations, specifically in publicly traded companies, any kind of strategic partnerships, mergers, acquisitions, making sure that the organization has a great talent strategy to have high performance teams, that kind of thing, and good leadership pipelines. That's typically what the chief executive officer cares about. And you have very limited time with the chief executive officer. Now you know what to ask about, what they care about, at any kind of time you're interacting with your client. Now, how about the chief financial officer? Now, if you really think of the chief financial officer as the person that manages the organization finances and determines a strategy around those finances, you'll know what the chief financial officer cares about: the organization's financial health, risk, return on investment. So if you're an architect, your chances are you're going to have to build a business case that CFO is going to have to say, yes, I get it. I see the return on an investment for this architecture and the business. So think about the CFO thinking about cash flow, profitability, that kind of thing, cost optimization and spending control, being able to look at the balance sheet and determine whether it's better to have an operational expense or a capital expense based upon the organization's leverage and other factors. They may be looking at certain types of compliance. For example, in a publicly traded company, the CFO would be getting involved in, say, SOX compliance or Sarbanes-Oxley, that kind of thing. And typically thinking about where that organization strategically place their money. Do they put it in AI? Do they put it in workforce training or whatever it is? The chief financial officer is the person that's the gatekeeper to the money. So as an architect, if you want the company to buy your architecture, you'll have to prove to the chief financial officer what's in it for the company financially. Now let's talk about the chief operating officer. Now, the chief operating officer is responsible for the organization running and doing things and executing. So the chief operating officer in many businesses is typically the number 2. Now, the chief in that organization, because they're in charge of basically running the company. Now, in many cases, the chief operating officer is focused on process efficiency, looking at cost reductions. They're looking about the end-to-end understanding of operations and how to tune various components along the way, looking at risk mitigation and creating an organizational resilience. If something happens, how to keep the systems up and running. Really focused on how to make that workforce more productive and enable them either by giving them better tools, for example, or systems to actually help, process optimization, what have you. And realistically speaking, that's the main goal of the chief operating officer. Keep the systems running and running smoothly. So now we start getting into the tech roles that you may or may not be familiar with, depending upon where you've been in your past life. If this is your first architecture job and you've never spoken to the CIO, let's talk about what the CIO or chief information officer typically cares about. Now, the chief information officer is primarily focused on technology strategies, just like an enterprise architect. They're focused on digital transformation. They're focused on running the technology or the IT systems and running them in a secure, available, resilient manner that strategically maps to the organization's business needs. So at the CIO level, they're going to be thinking about things like IT alignment with business goals. Sounds a whole lot like enterprise architecture because it is. But the key here is to find ways to demonstrate measurable business value with whatever technology changes we actually make. It's digital transformation. It's determining what's the best way to enable the employees to do their job and what are the best tech tools we can give them to actually do it. The CIO is typically responsible for the cybersecurity for the organization, especially if the CISO reports into the CIO, or that could potentially be through a different office. But the CIO is obviously going to have a lot of security responsibilities as well, regardless how the organization is structured. The chief information officer, typically tech governance. They're going to be looking for means to standardize architecture, standardize access, standardize a way to audit it so people can really understand what's going on in the systems, and realistically speaking, give the employees what they need from a tech perspective to do their jobs and do it better. Now, the last CXO member we're going to talk about in this video is going to be the Chief Technology Officer. Now, the Chief Technology Officer is a little bit different than the Chief Information Officer. The Chief Information Officer is more of a strategist, and the Chief Technology Officer is more of a tech-focused innovation professional, where they're really focused on more innovation, more technology architecture, more about making sure the organization's engineering processes can do things better and faster, for example. So we might think of the CTO as focusing on more of an architecture piece, scalable architectures, modern architectures. We may have this chief technology officer focus on more technology differentiation, maybe building proprietary technology or a technology strategy to give that business a competitive advantage. The CTO is constantly going to be evaluating emergency technologies and their applicability for the business. They'll typically be involved in some type of tech talent retention or maybe upskilling of the technology people that are there. Now, in this video, we covered the C-suite and CXO relevancy, which is knowing what the C-suite needs, knowing what their concerns are. And if you're CXO relevant, you can walk into a meeting, you can ask the right questions to the right member of the C-suite and present the right information to the things that the right C-suite member actually cares about. If you've enjoyed this video on CXO relevancy and you'd like to become a cloud architect, enterprise architect, security architect, AI architect, or any other kind of architect, we have architecture programs for all architecture careers, but you can also join us for a free architecture webinar where we'll talk about all the skills you need to become, say, a cloud architect or enterprise architect or an AI architect or a security architect. We'll talk about everything you need to learn, what you don't learn, and you'll be able to ask me any questions live and free on Zoom. If you want me to evaluate your readiness for a job, I'll happily do so. You want me to check out your LinkedIn profile in this free webinar, I'll happily do so. Anything we can do to help you get your first cloud architect, security architect, AI architect job, or whatever architect job you desire, you can sign up for one of these free architecture webinars in the description of this video. We also, while you're in the description of this video, have many resources to help you in your cloud architect or solutions architect, AI architect, enterprise architect, or security architect career. Just go check them out, sign up for some, and they'll be emailed to you. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your IT architecture career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Take care.